The Toronto Blue Jays have a golden opportunity this offseason, not only to sign this one specific individual player, but to spend a ton of money and to get themselves back into contention. It's a golden opportunity to get butts back in the seats, and ultimately, that is what Rogers wants, and sprinkle in a championship in there every now and then as well. So we'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. Welcome in, everybody, to Jays Digest. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside a host, Nick Gosse. And Nick and I are going to make our stances very clear on this that we do not care how much money the Toronto Blue Jays spend. It is not our money, and nor should you care how much money the Toronto Blue Jays spend. The goal is to get back into contention, to get back into the playoffs, and revenue and ticket sales and jersey sales, all of that stuff starts to fall into place when you have a competitive ball club. And they may not get the white whale, they may not get the golden goose in Juan Soto, but that should not deter them from spending a ton of money on the other free agents in this class because it is absolutely loaded, and this is a golden opportunity for them to get their team back into a winning environment. And Nick, there's a lot of interesting names that we're going to break down in this video right here, and the possibilities are truly endless. The Blue Jays could get a lot better this offseason with or without Juan Soto. So let's take a look at some of the options.
Yeah, it's Ross Atkins' last chance, really, and Marshall Power for that matter. And a couple new reports surrounding a couple new targets, some familiar faces, and we also have an article from Ben Nicholson Smith sprinkled in there about their spending, like you mentioned, as well as some other things. But I want to start with this, and I want to get your thoughts. And we haven't really had a full video in a while, at least, on Alex Bregman. The Jays are interested in him. They're interested in Luis Severino. The Jays are known to be into the Juan Soto bidding, but like all teams, they have to consider backup plans. Ben Nicholson Smith takes a look at their Soto pursuit and notes they have interest in Max Fried, Luis Severino, of course, Santander, but also Alex Bregman. And this is very interesting. Obviously, we've talked about him briefly in videos, but Alex Bregman is a guy that when you're looking at a pure money standpoint, it would be a player that I know you're pretty fond of here, but he would cost a lot. A lot of fans out there are worried about a George Springer, comparison when it comes to the contract and how that's aging. But if you want to, catapult yourself into contention right away, starting the offseason with an Alex Bregman would be a very good way to do that. And I know some fans, especially on our live stream last week, a lot of Jays fans out there are saying that, Clement gives you a similar war in the sense, statistically, that Alex Bregman would last year and has and will going forward. However, and I'll get your thoughts on it in a second, but I think Bregman provides what the Jays need right now, which is stability at third base, power when healthy, and again, he probably won't age. The contract probably won't age well, but that doesn't matter. It's better than at this. Like if they sign to a 6-year deal and 3 of those years are great and they make serious pushes in the playoffs, it doesn't really matter how much the second half of the contract is hurting them because there's no salary cap in baseball, but with the way these contracts are going, each year contracts are going to look better and better regarding the years prior and the contracts that were signed before. Because a crazy contract extension a couple of years ago is no money now.
Well, let's take a look at some of the teams that have participated in the World Series recently and have won the World Series recently. So obviously the Los Angeles Dodgers, we know the story there. They spent over $1 billion last offseason. $1 billion. They are signing everybody that has a pulse that can make their team better. That is the approach that they're taking. Not only are they doing that, they're deferring money. They are offering these guys payments until they are like this is Teoscar Hernandez, for example. He's going to be getting paid until he's 46.
From
He
a
signed
1 year deal.
from a 1 year deal. But I don't think anybody in the Dodgers organization is arguing that Teoscar Hernandez was one of their best players in the playoffs last year. He came up with huge hits all postseason long, and they won a World Series. So at the end of the day, who cares? The Blue Jays' main mandate is to maximize this window that they have open right now with Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. There is uncertainty beyond this season coming up. They're going to be free agents. I don't see any contract extension signed yet from either of those two guys, and I don't know if we will this season, Nick. I don't know if we ever will. But if you spend money, if you show them that you're serious about contending not only for this season, but for years to come, I think that puts you in the pole position in terms of retaining them past next season. So you can you can talk about bad contracts, you can talk about not wanting to go over a certain tax threshold. I don't care about any of that. First of all, it's not my money. And second of all, we see the amount of revenue that it generates when you have a competitive ball club on the team. Let's take a look at the attendances from 2022, 2023. That is when you had wild card teams. Teams that didn't go deep in the playoffs, but teams that were competitive later on in the season. You had sellout crowds. You had attendances over 1.5 million for the entire season. That is the kind of revenue that you bring in when you spend money and when you feel the competitive ball club. So I don't care about the ramifications 5 or 10 years from now. I don't care if you handcuff yourself financially in a decade from now. You have good players on your team. You have to surround them with other good players. So go out there, spend the money, and you're going to reap the benefits of that in the short term. You're going to get butts in the seats. You're going to get ticket sales. You are going to get jersey sales. All of that, all of what comes with being a competitive ball club, you are going to reap those benefits. So if you don't get Soto, I don't care. You can still field a competitive ball club with the other guys that are available in this loaded free agency class.
Yeah.
Sorry to rant there.
No, and looking at specifically Alex Bregman and some other players as well, but I want to get your thoughts on, and of course everybody watching as well. Ernie Clement was the primary option in 2024, had a very solid season. Like he had a 94 WRC plus, but he gained a lot of his WAR. If you're a big fan of WAR, if not, good player. But his defense was really good, stole some bases. And the wars are a bit up in the air depending on if you use, of course, baseball reference. Fangraphs had him at 2.2. Regardless, if Bregman took over as the everyday hot corner at hot corner, sorry, it could move Clement into a utility role, which I also think is a better option for the Toronto Blue Jays. I don't think Ernie Clement starting on the Toronto Blue Jays would mean that they field or are going to field a playoff team. I love Ernie Clement. I like what he brings. I just don't think he can be a starting shortstop or third baseman at this point for an everyday team. And he was obviously thrust into the role because of Bichette's injuries and some lackluster signings last offseason. But regarding Alex Bregman here, there's a ton of other players. There's some other reports as well. Some rumors going around the Jays are a team to watch on Bregman again. Just some classic rumors. But the actual report is from Ben Nicholson Smith here. So I want to get your thoughts on this as the rumors regarding Bregman are starting to heat up. Again, take this with a grain of salt. This is just a guy on Twitter. You get some things right, whatever. But regarding the Ben Nicholson Smith tweet and report, what are your thoughts specifically on Alex Bregman and how he would fit onto the team? I think he would provide some stability. The contract is probably not exactly what the Jays would love to get, but I think ultimately they don't really have much choice. I mean, maybe they prefer a guy like Anthony Santander, very different positions, and they rock Clement at third, but you look at, they're interested in Max Fried, Luis Severino, Anthony Santander, and Bregman. I think you need to get at least two of those guys, and not just any two of those guys, one of Fried, Santander, or Alex Bregman. And I do like Severino to a degree if he's the fourth guy the Jays get this offseason.
Yeah, and they should be interested in everybody, to put it lightly, and they usually are. But you got to act upon this, and you have to spend money. It's the Jays have some of the most money to work with in Major League Baseball. It is not an excuse to not be a top five payroll or to even not be a top three payroll. You need to be up there in terms of how much money you spend and who you're acquiring in free agency at the trade deadline. You're a big player. You're a big boy on in this market here. Enough of the penny pinching, enough of trying to stay below the tax threshold. Like I mentioned earlier, if you don't get Soto, that should not deter you from spending $400 million this offseason or $500 million this offseason. You have it. You've seen what kind of impact bringing in good players, maybe not great players, can have on your team in terms of winning and in terms of revenue. So, what's the hesitation there? I understand that it's a business and that you have to make money, but I guarantee that you're going to make some pretty damn good revenue if you have a 90-win ball club and if you're playing competitive baseball into September and early October. You're going to reap those benefits. You're going to have a sellout Rogers Center every single game. The fans are dying for a competitive team. Last year sucked. We knew that maybe it wouldn't go as planned, and maybe they wouldn't meet expectations that we had going into the season. But I'll tell you what, Nick, watching other teams go at it in the playoffs, even though the Jays haven't been far in a very long time, it hurt me. And it hurt not seeing the Jays be a part of that. So I think the fan base is now getting impatient. They're starting to get very frustrated with the front office, and this does feel like a last chance for them. It feels like this is their final opportunity to make good by the fans. And how do you do that? You do that by spending money and committing to having a competitive ball club, not just for this season, but for the next 3 to 5 years, and really easing the tensions of the fan base. Because, like we mentioned earlier in the video, Nick, the uncertainty around Vladdy and Bo, that's a pretty unsettling feeling, at least for me. I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't feel good having my two star players not signed beyond this season and with no real prospect pool to look out for either. So you're in a bleak situation right now. Your only way out of this is to spend a crap ton of money, and the Blue Jays have a crap ton of money. So get these deals done.
Yeah, I thought they were gonna sign or have Vladdy signed by now, and we see reports that again, according to Ben Nicholson Smith, their top targets are Fried and Anthony Santander. So those are a couple big money guys. We've seen interest in Luis Severino, and one thing I want to bring up here before we do wrap up, this was a part of Ben Nicholson Smith's article from a few days ago. If Soto's in play, how much money do they really have to spend? And I'm not, saying that they're going to get Juan Soto. I think the likelihood at this point is low, and I also think it's dropping by the day regarding the Toronto Blue Jays. That being said, it's still possible. I still hold out hope. He's probably going to sign this week, but you can see this here, and he basically goes into some of the money in the cap hit. So Shapiro said he didn't see the payroll either growing or decreasing in a big way, and indications are that still holds true. The club believed it finished under the $237 million competitive balance tax threshold, and after non-tendering Romano and Dylan Tate, Fangraphs roster resource estimates that their current guarantees and projected commitments are at $203 million. So if you do the math there, that's about $38 million to work with to stay under the competitive balanced tax threshold, which if you go over that means you have to pay more money. The team has to pay basically a tax percentage for every whatever it is $1 million over the cap hit that they the cap. Yeah. There's no actual cap, but the tax balance that they do there to try to keep teams competitive. It clearly doesn't. Whether you also the Jays can defer money as well. It's not like this is a Dodgers monopoly. They can defer money as well. It's just
exactly.
Other teams haven't done it. Maybe haven't thought about it. And granted, I think for a lot of players, they're fine. Some players aren't fine deferring money. Like Soto's not going to have money deferred because he obviously wants it now. You never know what the future holds. That being said, some players like Teoscar Hernandez, he was thinking, hey, may as well defer some money and play on a World Series team because the Dodgers are at a point where they have obviously a super team and they want to be able to defer money. But about $38 million to spend if they want to stay under that cap thing. And again, this isn't including the Soto special, little line of credit, I can say, that they have where they're willing to give Soto $50 million a year. He's the only exception, but I wouldn't mind them. They don't have to go crazy over, but I wouldn't mind them going over this. Of course, I wouldn't. It's not my money, but the competitive balance tax, $50 million if you have to. Spend $25 on Fried, spend $25 on Bregman, spend $20 on Santander, and then you have a playoff caliber, maybe even World Series, depending on how the team plays out, caliber team, especially, of course, in the AL where the Dodgers don't reside.
Well, if you have $38 million to work with on an annual basis, I'm sorry to break it to you, but I don't think that's good enough. I don't. You have to add a lot of wins this offseason. And I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but if you do go over that tax threshold in order to have a competitive ball club, you're going to make some of that money back, if not all of it. So, uh, yeah, you need to spend. And good for Teoscar Hernandez. This guy's getting a $850,000 check every single season until he's 46. I don't think he's going to be playing until he's 46. Very good player. I love him. I hope he can stay in the big leagues for that long, but I don't think that's possible. But still, he got himself paid over a 1 year contract. I don't know if that's something the Jays are looking to do, but that is why the Dodgers give themselves this competitive advantage. They deferred money on Tommy Edman, for God's sakes. It's Tommy Edman. He was great in the playoffs, but he's not an MVP caliber player. He's not even an all-star caliber player. But you're doing whatever you can to keep your team competitive. The Dodgers have no limit to what amount of money they're going to spend. They have no limit to how far they're going to go to retain that nucleus of players that won them the World Series. If other teams operated that same way, we'd see a little bit more parity in Major League Baseball. But for lack of a better word, that takes some balls that the Dodgers are using right there. They're employing that I don't care mentality, and they're doing whatever it takes to win ball games, to win World Series. Doesn't always work out for them. They don't always win the World Series, but you give yourself a much better chance come October, come early November, if you're spending money and you're sticking it to every other team that isn't.
And also, they just, like you mentioned, they just won the World Series, so I don't think they're too worried about money coming in and money coming out
No,
when they have won now, multiple World Series, and they got the best player in baseball in Ohtani, who hasn't even started pitching yet, by the way, for everybody who
look
forgot.
out.
Yeah, that'll wrap it up. Let us know down below what your thoughts are. A ton of new reports are coming out, and I suspect that this is going to be the week that Juan Soto signs. So we'll have a video. Hopefully it's with the Blue Jays, but either way, lots of stuff coming. So make sure to hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.